I will begin by welcoming everyone and thanking everyone who helped make this possible at every single level, um, and everyone who's in attendance. And I'm incredibly grateful because this is the moment when we need to have this conversation and then we need to act. So the first thing I want to say, and I'll tell you all about bonobos, but the first thing I want to say is that everything about bonobos gives me hope. So I want us to keep in mind that we have a hopeful model of moving forward. And especially today, we need that hope and we need to keep that in view every day. Okay, this is our launch party. These are bonobos. And again, welcome and thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time. Our party plan is I'm going to introduce the Bonobo Sisterhood Alliance, explain how to stand up for each other like bonobos do for one another. We are going to have a demonstration where we actually learn skills to counter verbal harassment. And this is part of the focus and desire of the Bonobo Sisterhood Alliance is to get us to understand that we have selves worth defending and how we can do that in real life. And we're also going to hear, very importantly, about how we build bridges between and among women and non-binary folk to protect ourselves and one another and to get rid of the traditional patriarchal divisions that we learn. And just, we're done with those as of right now. Done. Okay. It's Martin Luther King Day. So a moment of appreciation for his leadership and for Coretta Scott King, who was also completely amazing and really carried on his torch. I am convinced that the women of the world, united without any regard for national or racial dimensions, can become a most powerful force for international peace and brotherhood. So I want us to keep this in mind. And as we think about sisterhood, we need to also open our thoughts to brotherhood. We can coexist peacefully and together. Okay. All right, this is our fabulous Bonobo panel. I could not be more excited to have each and every one of you. We'll start with Brianna Banks, and I had the privilege and honor of having her as my law student and as a research assistant. And Bree was one of the four students who comprised the squad that helped me get the book out. And she also has actual writing in the book. So that distinguishes her. And now she's a practicing attorney in LA at Gibson and Dunn, and she's going to start us off. I'm just going to tell you who else is on, and then I'll kick it over to Bree. Omkari Williams is an activist and author. I was on her podcast a couple years ago, and I said to her, if all podcasts were like this, I would do this like every day. She's just amazing. So we'll hear from her in a little while. And she's also the author of a great book on microactivism. So she'll talk about that. And I encourage everybody to check out her book. Shay and Rene both are trainers for Impact Boston. And Impact Boston is a self-defense organization with whom I've partnered to put on Bonobo Sisterhood self-worth defending classes. And they're going to do actually a demonstration so that we walk away from this webinar tonight with some skills. Okay. What are bonobos? Brief background for those of you who might not know. So bonobos are like chimpanzees, 98.7% related to humans. We share our DNA. They were thought of as pygmy chimpanzees for a long time, but they're actually a separate species. And what makes them so exciting is how they work. So if a female bonobo was aggressed upon by a male bonobo, she would let out a special cry that sounds kind of like this. And all the other bonobos, all the other females within earshot, whether they like her, know her, or are related to her, come immediately charging to her aid, and they form an instantaneous coalition and they fend off the male. and they sent him into isolation. There's a lot of noise and screaming and feathers flying, although they don't have feathers. And then he comes back to the troop and reunites after he's learned his lesson. Evolutionarily, bonobos have eliminated male sexual coercion. As such, bonobos enjoy reproductive autonomy. So they are worthy of our attention, seriously. So, like the bonobos, we have to learn that we have to stand up for one another, whether we know, like, or are related to our sisters when we hear a bonobo cry. So, a lot of this goes on in between your two ears. And it's instead of judging other women when we hear a cry and saying, well, that's her problem, or I'm not like her, or look at how she's dressed, or anything like that, we retrain our brain to just come to her aid, to know that she has a self-worth defending, that we have a self-worth defending, she has a self-worth defending, and it's our job as a bonobo to come to her aid. And this really is going to change everything. 20 words or less, the bonobo principle, which seems to be the premise upon which female bonobos act, is nobody can harm my sister. You can't do that to her. And then everybody's my sister. And if we can start acting like that and let that principle animate our lives, we will see an evolution. Okay, we all have selves worth defending, and we need to use our power to defend our sisters, not to ask questions, just to hear the call and just to respond. And now I would like to turn it over to Bree.
No one has the right to harm my sister. Everyone is my sister. It's a lofty principle, and I know that with everything going on and with patriarchy looming large, the question of how do I live that principle comes to mind. So for that, I would like to share a personal story from my life that's also present in the fantastic book, The Bonobo Sisterhood. So some of you might be familiar with it. About 4 years ago, I went to Mexico with one of my childhood best friends on like a family vacation type trip. And it was her, me, her sister, her little sister, her little god sister, and a host of aunts, uncles, parents, etc. We had this huge dinner. So we were all getting dressed up, just full makeup, hair, high heels, everything. And Kennedy and Maya go to the dinner slightly early. They're about 19 or 20 at this time. As they're walking down to this dinner, there's this long, beautiful hallway in the hotel. And there's a group of men there that have to be in their 30s that are catcalling them, telling them they're beautiful, all these things. And Kennedy and Maya are just shrugging it off. And their catcalling turns mean. And it becomes words like bitch and tease and, oh, you think you're too good for us, etc. As they try and speed up and pass these, I'll use the term men, Kennedy slips and falls. And the harassing then becomes laughing, and that's what you get, and you deserved it. And Kennedy's in tears, and now her whole night is ruined. And so my best friend Lori and I show up at this dinner and like shortly after and see Kennedy crying. And Kennedy tells me what happened to her and what these men did to her. And immediately I heard the call. Immediately I felt the need to stand up for her and protect her. So I said, when you see those men, let me know. I'm not that much older than Kennedy, maybe 10 years. But I still felt this need to protect my younger self, my other self, my sister. So we see the man, and I immediately just approach them and say, hi, like, so nice to meet you. This is what you did to my sister, and this is why it's wrong. You have no authority, no right to hurt her like this, to harass her. She's not yours. And I just go off. And at this, I think at some point I mentioned the word accountability. Like you have to hold, because he's like giving all these excuses. Oh, it wasn't me, it was my friends. Or, oh, you know how it gets on vacation. And at some point, I say, you're accountable for your brothers. And that just sent him off. He starts calling me a little girl, a child. Who do I think I'm talking to? I need to respect my elders. And I resist this urge to just, I don't know, because I realized that he wasn't hearing me and he wasn't listening to me. But as I'm fighting back the tears, as I'm trying so hard to stand up for this younger version of me, I noticed that my best friend's aunt is standing behind me. And she, this whole time, had been protecting me the same way I was protecting Kennedy. And at this point, she interjects. She heard the call and she defended me. And she comes in and grabs me and said something to the man and pulls me aside. And I will actually, this is included in the book, and I will read it because it's just so wonderful. She said, "This moment wasn't for him, it was for Kennedy. Kennedy saw a beautiful, brilliant woman step up for her today. Now she knows that she is worthy of someone fighting for her, someone defending her." So going back to the bonobo principle of why is this so important that we stand up for our sisters? It's so that they know that they are worthy of someone standing up for them, someone protecting them, someone defending them. Even people that you don't know, because everyone is your sister, whether you know her or not. And I think back to the moment of how Diane and I got involved with Crystal Kaiser, a young girl who's facing murder charges in Wisconsin, thousands of miles away. We don't know her, but we heard the call. She is our sister. She was being trafficked and felt so alone because no one was there to protect her, no one was there to defend her, that she felt the need to self-defend and allegedly kill her abuser. But Diane and I heard that call. And that's why this is everything that we're doing, this alliance is so, so, so important because every girl needs to know that there is someone there protecting her and that she is worthy of protection. And with that, I'll pass it back to Diane. Diane, I think you're muted.
Someone has control over my mute. Bree, thank you. That was perfect and beautiful and a really powerful summation of your work and contribution to the Bonobo Sisterhood. Bree is also a board member of the Bonobo Sisterhood, which is fitting. Okay, everyone take a deep breath. That was a lot. Okay, now we're going to hear from Omkari, who is a new friend of mine and colleague, but I feel also a comfort level that you usually don't get until a few years in. I'm just going to say that. And I view you, Omkari, as a really important partner in this work. And I am so grateful for what you bring to the table and your honesty and courage and brilliance and all the theories of microactivism that I think are so like tangible and important. There's so many things we can do on a macro level and on a micro level. And I'm really interested in what you have to say about how we can build bridges. And then I'm really interested in how you and I do that together. So
Thank you so much, Diane, for inviting me into this conversation. You mentioned the podcast where we met, and it was one of those moments where I read your book and I was like, I absolutely must talk to this woman. This is such important work. And when I was listening to Bree, I thought about how when I was a little girl, like 7 or 8, I remember being in school and there was this kid who was bullying other kids. And it was a little boy, and he was an indiscriminate bully. He would bully anyone. I will give him that. But what was interesting when I look back is that the little girls in the class stood up to him. we sort of banded together and went up to him and said, "You have to stop being so mean. It's not okay with us for you to be mean. It's especially not okay with us for you to be mean to the other little girls in the class." And I thought about how we could do that at 8, but then by the time we were in middle school, we weren't doing that anymore. And that was because we lived in a patriarchal society that had shifted our reference points from cooperation to competition. And competition is the exact opposite principle of bonobo. Bonobo is about you see a need from your sister and you meet that need. And that is such an important thing, especially right now when the attacks on women are just coming from all sides fast and furious. And we need to recognize that we do have selves worth defending. And we do have sisters out there, and every woman is our sister, and that we need to stand up for one another. So I think, especially today, I've been thinking a lot about what do we want to do? How do we keep moving forward? Because it's a disheartening time in a lot of ways, but we can make a different choice. We can decide either to be disheartened, or we can use the circumstances that we find ourselves in as fuel. And I think that we serve ourselves better by using these circumstances as fuel and deciding that, okay, this is what is, and this is how we're going to respond. We are going to respond by building community. We're going to respond by listening to our sisters. We're going to respond by defending our sisters when they need defending and allowing them to defend us when we need defending. So I think it's just incredibly important in this moment in time to be able to say, this is what we do because this is what matters to us, and not let ourselves be thrown off course by all of the stuff that's going to come flying at us, because it's going to be kind of wild, I think, for the next bit of time. And when I was thinking about my book and how my book relates to Bonobo and Bonobo Sisterhoods, my book is on microactivism and I wrote it because I think that often people think of activism as this big thing that is an all-consuming effort that you dedicate your life to, and that that's it, that's what you're doing. But I don't see it that way. I see activism as an everyday choice that we make in small ways that add up. And when I think about bonobo and activism in the context of bonobo, I think about the conversations that we have. I think about the actions that we take. I think about the dreams that we have and the hope that we keep alive. And I believe that it's really important to engage with each other and the men in our lives who are also on this page, and just say, yeah, we are going to affirm in our actions, in our words, and our deeds, that women have a self worth defending, and we are going to be there for one another no matter what happens. So I encourage everyone listening to take the micro action of, at the end of this call, becoming a member of the Bonobo Sisterhood Alliance. Go online, explore what's there, and then start thinking about how you can manifest that in your life on a regular basis. And understand that we are incredibly powerful. We are incredibly gifted as people and communicators and members of society. And we affirm that when we stand up for one another and when we do not let someone tell our sister that she is not worthy, that she does not have a self-worth defending. So thank you so much for creating this amazing, amazing organization, Diane, and I turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you. Again, that's very, very moving. And I hear that as a clarion call. And I think that we are so powerful, and that's why it's so frightening to people who would like to deprive us not only of our power, but but of our belief in our own power. So with that, we're going to think about how we all have selves worth defending, because it starts with ourselves. When we take self-defense and we learn from the outside in that we can defend ourselves, and we learn from the inside out that we have selves, in fact, worth defending. And it's so transformative and so powerful, and it just makes walking down a street different, but it also makes our relationships different. When we know that we can set boundaries and insist that those boundaries be respected, and that we know we can back that up, and then we know that we have sisters behind us and with us and next to us and in front of us. So, so I'd like to introduce Shay and Rene now. Shay is the trainer that I've worked with for a couple years. We've put on some self-worth defending classes together at Harvard Law School for the last 2.5 years. And Rene is one of the suited trainers, which means that they did 200 hours of training. And an amazing thing about that is that when they suit up, the person who's learning self-defense kicks and hits, and they know exactly how much pressure that was. They can feel it through the suit, but it doesn't hurt them. But they know when it would have been a knockout in real life. So with that, we're going to do a demonstration. And I also want to thank you both for taking the time and contributing to this effort, and also for being trauma informed and gracious at all turns in everything I've done with you and your organization.
Thanks, Diane. We're happy to be here. Rene is not wearing a suit for this demonstration. We're just going to do a verbal demonstration. And we're going to say that I am alone at a train station. All right. Normally we would take up more space. We're going to try to stay within the camera. Okay. So just note that when I am getting space from this person, if I had more space to use, I would take it. And speaking of being trauma informed, I want to point out that we are going to show a demonstration that involves some level of coercion and gaslighting and things that could be difficult to watch. So feel free to step out if you need to, breathe, do whatever you need to do. Again, we're going to say that I am alone at a train station, and I'm going to be paid some unwanted attention by a stranger. Okay, I'm going to show how I respond to that attention, how I continue to respond as the threat level goes up, and then we'll explain what I did after.
I'll be wearing these sunglasses to show that I'm in character.
Ready?
Yeah, do you know where Washington Street is?
No, sorry, I don't know.
Oh, you're not from around here, huh?
I'm sorry, I can't help you, but I think there's a guy up in the booth that would know.
Oh, you're definitely not from around here. Those guys are totally useless. Where are you from? You're not from around here.
No offense, I just don't really feel like talking. Have a good day, though.
You can't blame a guy for trying to holler at a pretty lady. Sorry, that was cheesy. Let me try again. I'm Robbie, by the way.
No, stop. Please don't come closer to me.
I'm just trying to introduce myself. It's all right.
No, please just leave me alone. I said I don't want to talk.
What's your name?
Stop!
Oh.
I said don't come closer to me.
No, it's okay. No need for all that.
No, I need you to leave me alone.
I'm just trying to holler at you. That's all.
I need you to leave me alone. You're making me uncomfortable.
Come on, it's okay.
Stop!
Oh my.
Leave me alone.
Oh my God. Go take your meds, lady.
All right, so I want everybody to take a deep breath. And what we're going to do now is we're going to explain what I did, okay? And then we will invite folks to come up and not come up, but like stand up if you want to, or stay seated. And I will give you some prompts to practice some of the things that I did, okay? So again, I'm standing here, I'm alone at a train station, and we're saying that this person comes up and first just like stands really close to me, okay? So that's already a red flag for me. Sometimes people in my position like tend to overthink. They might be like, I want to move away from this person, but you know, what if he's a nice guy? I don't want to offend him. I don't want to hurt his feelings, right? I like to ask myself the question and to encourage people to ask themselves a question. Are you vulnerable right now? Or are you feeling vulnerable right now, right? Because if the answer to that question is yes, and for me it is yes, I'm alone. This person is close enough to already touch me, right? there's train tracks in front of me. We're saying my exit is that way. We didn't say that before, but my exit is, he's between me and my exit, right? So the answer is yes, I am vulnerable. Then I know my safety is more important than this person's feelings, right? Again, we've talked about a self-worth defending. That is what I need to remember right now, is that my safety more important than his feelings. So I move away, I find a new spot, and we start an interaction, or he starts an interaction, right?
Yeah, this is obviously a pretext to get into some other kind of engagement. It's not about directions, right? This person's trying to engage in Shay in a conversation she doesn't want to have.
Right, exactly. I already gave him a way to like get that help. I made it clear that I couldn't help him. And so the fact that he's still talking to me, I'm getting some sense that like that's not what this is about, right? So at first, what I do is I politely set a boundary. Anytime I don't want to be in a conversation with someone or I don't like what's happening, a good way to find out if this person means me harm is to set a boundary and see what happens. Because a healthy, safe person would stop talking to me when I say, no offense, I don't feel like talking, right? But that's not what happened here, right?
Yeah, this person kept talking and they were using a specific strategy in terms of how they were trying to kind of wear Shay down. They were using the strategy of coercion. The element of surprise, Shay took the element of surprise away when she moved away and showed the person that she's aware of their presence. So he had to kind of switch strategies. So he's using coercion, he's using kind of a forced charm, trying to like pay Shay compliments. And he's banking on not that necessarily working, that she'll be charmed necessarily, but that she'll feel so kind of awkward and socially weird that that she'll maybe freeze up or comply.
Right. And that is unfortunately likely to work because of the way that so many of us have been socialized, right? That could be because I'm a woman. A lot of young people also feel like they need to fit in. They don't want to cause a scene. They want to make sure that everybody else is comfortable, right? And so we talk about that a lot in our classes, especially with young women at the intersection of those two things, who might feel like their job is to make sure that other people are comfortable, right? But instead, what I'm focused on is this person has already broken the social contract, right? The social contract says that if I say I don't want to talk to somebody, there's no reason why he should be continuing to approach to me and talk, right? Again, a safe, healthy person wouldn't be doing that. And especially with me in this situation where I am vulnerable, a safe, healthy man would never continue to approach me, right? Would never continue to like make me feel cornered, right? And so I'm noticing that he's actually not responding in a way that a safe person would respond, right? And so I'm putting my safety above that fear that I might be overreacting, that I might be causing a scene, right? And instead, I am deciding that I'm more important than that, right? And that this is not okay. So I am turning to face him and I'm naming his behavior. I'm also getting into this sort of strong position where my hands are indicating that I don't want this interaction. And when we teach physical self-defense, I'm also putting my hands here so that I'm ready to use them if I have to, right? And I'm clearly indicating that I don't want what's happening.
Yeah, there's no mistake. This person is clearly aware that they're crossing these boundaries. It's not some sort of misreading of social cues. And so he literally walks over the boundary and starts to get closer.
Right. And every time he does that, that gives me more information about his intent. He is not a safe person, right? He's continuing to push me back. So I'm getting louder. I'm naming his behavior again. I'm saying what I want, right? And I'm doing that because it's important for my safety, right? He doesn't want me to be loud. He wants me to comply. He wants me to feel awkward and be like, oh, I don't really want to talk to this person, but I don't know, like maybe he's nice. Okay, I'll shake his hand and then I'm too close, right? Or he wants me to feel like I don't really want his help, but like, I don't know, he feels kind of creepy, but like he's being helpful, he's being nice, right? So I guess he can help me carry my stuff. We can like walk to my front door together, right? He wants me to put myself in a compromising position because that's better for him, right? And again, he's pulling on those social norms. So I am doing the opposite. I am telling him that what he's doing is not okay, right? I'm not letting him gaslight me in that way.
Yeah, he kind of doubles down on that a couple of times, kind of minimizing, hey, it's okay, it's not a big deal. Like, I'm just trying to introduce myself. I'm just trying to holler at you. Like, this is like you're overreacting. So minimizing, gaslighting, that kind of thing. Up until the point where Shay gets so loud and gets space several times. He sees he's not getting anywhere with her, right? And so there's way too much unwanted attention on the situation. It's way too risky for this person to carry out an attack. And so he gives up and walks away. But he throws out a parting insult, one last sort of barb, saying, "Go take your meds, lady." Further kind of gaslighting, maybe trying to cover his tracks, make Shay feel like she's overreacting, make it less likely for her to report, might be protecting his own ego, or might be trying to hook her ego.
Right. And also we heard from that earlier story, right? It's really common for men to flip the switch when they're like, "Oh, I'm paying you a compliment. And now I feel like you didn't just like accept my entitlement to you, right? And so now I'm gonna insult you. Now I'm gonna make you feel like more afraid, right? But what I'm doing is I'm taking a deep breath. I'm not engaging with this person because my safety is in jeopardy if I do, right? And then I afterward would go get help. So I'm gonna check how much time we have. Cool. So we are going to invite folks if they want to stand up or not. You can also do this seated. I'm going to sort of teach you the body language. You can also stay muted, or if you want to unmute, we can have folks unmute. What we normally do in classes is that we actually have the students practice the verbal skills. So that's what I'm going to invite you to do, is that I'm going to say something that I could say in a situation like this and sort of do a call and response. I say it, you say it back, right? To sort of practice getting into your body, the feeling of getting louder, the feeling of being firm, right? And we'll sort of like up the intensity level with each thing. And before I invite people to do that, I just want to say that when we teach these classes, the students are doing it, right? So we explain it, and then the students come up and do it. And with that practice and that feeling of like, yeah, I can get loud. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to push past this internal resistance of defending myself, and I'm going to push past the internal gaslighting I might be doing to myself, and I'm going to stand up for myself, right? What we actually see is that women have higher self-esteem after they've taken a self-defense class, empowerment self-defense specifically. They have less anxiety, and it also lessens the effects of PTSD for those that are experiencing PTSD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask if people want to be unmuted. Or are we going to have them raise their hands, Diane?
Sure. Is that okay, Emma?
More than okay.
Okay. If people want to be unmuted, raise your hand. If you want to also turn your video on, that'll feel more interactive for folks, feel like we're participating in this together. If you want to participate without unmuting, that's also fine. And if you don't want to yell, that's fine. I know you're probably in your own homes. Yeah, well, okay. So what we're going to do is first we're going to practice just getting into this stance. Okay, so what I want you to do is if you are standing up, you're going to take your strong leg and take it a half a step back. And you want your feet about like shoulder width apart so that you're balanced in all directions, okay? And your feet are both facing forward. And you can get your hands up into stop signs. We want these close together, and we want them kind of protecting our chest in front of our body, but clearly setting a boundary, not like a fighting stance, like a no, stop doing that stance. Okay, that looks awesome. Okay, so from here, we can get back into just like a normal position, okay? And you can have your hands, we call neutral, we call this neutral, just palm over palm, just in front of me, like ready to use them if I have to. So I'm going to say a phrase and give you the space to repeat it if you'd like to repeat it. Okay, so we're practicing setting some just like polite boundaries at first. This is how I test out if this person is safe or not. Okay, so one thing we can say is, no offense, I don't feel like talking.
No offense, I don't feel like talking.
Thanks.
I'm going to be
that's perfect. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't help you.
I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Can't help you.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
I'm not interested.
I'm not interested.
All right, so now let's say that that person's not listening to that boundary and is continuing to press or continuing to come closer, okay? So at this point, we would actually turn to face, but I'm going to keep facing you, and we would get those hands up, okay? Especially if they are pushing on our space when we set a clear boundary. All right, so now you're going to repeat after me, and you're going to say in a firm, louder voice, but not as loud as you can be, stop, don't come any closer.
Stop, don't come any
Stop, don't come
closer.
any closer.
Good. All right. And now let's say that that person is coming closer still. You could practice backing up if you want to. You want to keep that strong leg back. You would get space. Okay. And we're going to get really loud now. Okay. So it's going to look like this. You'll do it after me. Stop! Leave me alone!
Stop, leave me alone.
Whoa.
Leave me alone.
Good. Nice job. There's more, obviously, but we'll stop it there.
Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. So that's just the beginning, but really important. So that wonderful illustration is a demonstration of something that a feminist philosopher named Kate Mann calls himpathy, which is how women are taught to empathize with men over their own feelings. So we're afraid of hurting a guy's feelings, and this guy was using that to gaslight us. And I think that like gaslighting is such an incredibly insidious form of coercion. And the more that we can recognize it and name it as gaslighting, the better equipped we will be to fight against it. Two other quick things I want to say about self-defense is that self-defense is not victim blaming. And I would rather have somebody know that she or they can defend themselves in any circumstance than kind of worry about that. And when you really like come down to it, the victim blaming comes from patriarchy convincing us that we have control over our own assaults. So we need to kind of get out of that rock. Another thing I want to say about self-defense is that you learn a bunch of tools, and then you have this like little toolkit, and you can walk around with your little toolkit. You don't learn every single thing, every single situation that you might face, but you know somewhere in your body, you learn that you have the tools to defend it. So I'm going to give a quick example of something that happened to me that so far, thankfully, this is the only time I've had to use my self-defense training. I was in Chicago. Some of my Chicago family members are on the phone. Thank you and hi. And I was driving a family car, it wasn't my car, to the airport to pick up my husband, and it had no gas. So I stopped to get gas, and I'm like thinking about things, and it's a Saturday afternoon. And this creepy, big, bald, white guy comes, he starts walking towards me, and he's wearing these like little funny sunglasses. And he just like, my instinct was, all my hackles were raised, and he was a creep. And that's another thing, you have to listen to your instinct. Your instinct will tell you. And the only time, I mean, you just really need to listen to your instinct. Don't second guess, don't overthink, like Shay was saying. And he comes over to me, and I'm holding the gas, and he has a pink piece of paper in his hand, and he says, "Hi, my name is Creepy McCreep. Here's my number. Why don't you call me sometime? What do you think?" And I took the gas out of the tank, and I aimed it at him as if like I could shoot him with gas or something. And I said through gritted teeth, "I think you should walk away." Like just like that. And I didn't learn that in self-defense, but I learned like, get out of my space. Like you're testing me. You have no right to be in my space. I don't want you in my space, and go back under the rock from which you came. And that was it. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to say before we have little comments or short comments about wrapping up, and then we're going to take questions from the audience, is the idea of bonobo dance parties. You should all have bonobo dance parties, and you should have bonobo book clubs. But here's how self-defense or bonobo dance parties add to our tools to intervene when we know somebody is in a dangerous or abusive situation. So if we say to our relative or friend or acquaintance, "I think you're in an abusive situation, and here's a pamphlet with some battered women's services if you ever decide you want to leave or you need help, or if I can help you, let me know. That person is more likely to deny it because we put so much shame on victims and instead say, oh, no, it was just a bad night, or he lost his job, or he was drinking, and deny it. But instead, if we say, hey, I'm going to this great self-defense class on Friday night, we're going to pick you up at 6:30, or I'm going to a bonobo dance party or some kind of bonobo event, just be creative, and I'm going to pick you up. Get her out of that situation, have her surrounded by a bonobo sisterhood who know that she's worth defending, and teach her and communicate that to her. And that might be the strength that she needs in order to change the circumstance. And the strength of just being protected by your sisters it's a multiplying exponential strength. Patriarchy divides us against one another. All of those divisions are false, and they just serve to perpetuate patriarchy. The bonobo sisterhood multiplies us. We are more than half of the population. When we start defending ourselves in numbers, we will change. We will have the evolution that we need now in this very moment in time more than ever before, in my opinion. Okay. Bree, do you have a couple thoughts you want to share with us?
Sorry?
Do you have any thoughts you want to share with us, like some closing thoughts before we go to Q&A?
Oh, wow. Closing thoughts. I guess I will go back to the principal and just say, this is, amazing work that we're doing. This is only the beginning though. And instead of feeling frustrated about things that are happening today that we won't talk about and just how strong the patriarchy is, I really, really, really want to encourage everyone to just look at all of these amazing women and non-binary people on this call and in your lives and strangers that you might meet, and just be reminded that no one has the right to harm my sister and everyone is my sister.
Thanks. Omkari?
Yeah, I just want to add to that the patriarchy is fighting as hard as it is because it knows that it's in decline. It knows that its days are numbered, and it's up to us to just move those days forward as quickly as we can. And by creating this kind of community, we advance that. So as you know, we don't let them stop us. We don't let this work stop, because we will win.
Well said. Shay and Rene, thank you for that amazing demonstration. The next part of that demonstration actually teaches you how to attack really effectively from that position, and so that Shay would be able to get past her assailant and get to safety.
I'm gonna just tweak that wording to defend.
Yeah.
Do you want any closing thoughts from
Yes.
us as well? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just point to what I said in the chat that I had forgotten to point out, which is that the tactics that we showed in the demo can be used by familiar people as well, right? And are more often used by familiar people. And the skills that I use, boundary setting, noticing the response from the person, getting firmer, right? Getting space, focusing on my safety, I can use those responses, those skills with anybody, regardless of whether they're someone I know or not. And I also just want to point out that what we showed in that demo and anything that we teach in class, it's not what someone has to do if they're in a situation like that, nor is it what anyone should have done having been in situations like that. We're always just trying to add tools to people's toolboxes, but you have a lot of choice in how you respond to these situations, and like whatever you do is not wrong. What the person is doing is wrong, right? And Rene.
Yeah, and someone, I think this is probably true for a couple of people. Someone mentioned that it kind of got their heart rate up. I just wanted to say that that's totally normal. Even just like watching the demonstrations, watching the scenarios that we do can be very adrenalizing. Our bodies don't necessarily know the difference between like a real attack and a simulated attack. And so that's yeah, I just wanted to name that. And there are different ways that we can manage our adrenaline. So having longer exhales than inhales. So if you want to breathe with me just for a moment here, breathe in for a 4 count, breathe out for 6. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can also do things like tapping or squeezing, where you're squeezing your own arms, your own legs to kind of get you back in your body. When adrenaline is released, we can feel like it's an out-of-body experience. And yeah, there's a couple of other things that you can do, but those are a couple of ways that you can manage your adrenaline.
Great. Thank you. And then just one final addendum about self-defense in that scenario is one of our colleagues was at a train station in New York at the subway station and saw a woman standing there, and this man kind of went up to her, and it looked like he was starting to harass her, and she wasn't sure, but she looked at this other woman, and then they both, even though they didn't know each other, they went and just stood by this woman, and the guy went away. And I was in the grocery store a few months ago, and this big man was like talking in a berating way to this woman. And I looked at them for like 10 seconds. And then I just went up to the woman. I was like, hey, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in so long. And she looked at me because I've never seen her before. And then she like understood. And I said, oh, I just stopped by to get some ice cream. Do you want to see this I don't know, new kind of ice cream that I'm getting? And she walked away with me. And she's like, how did you know how to do that? I'm like, I don't know. But anyway, like when you tune your ear to the bonobo call, you hear it all the time. So you have to answer it. It's really important. So now let's take Q&A. It's so wonderful to see everyone here. This is very fun.
Okay. I have a question.
Okay. Wait,
Should
are
we
you
in the chat or shall we speak?
You can go ahead and ask if you're unmuted. Feel free. If you would rather put a question in the chat, also feel free to do it that way.
Okay, I would love to ask this question. I thought the demo was really helpful, and I like the idea of the book club and ideas to bring people together, to have structure. So I know you're putting all this on the website, but just wondered if you could highlight what you think are the most most productive things we could do right away to get the movement going.
The great question. Thank you. I think spreading the word and knowing that you can spread the word. So talking to people about it, joining a book club, getting it for your book club. I'm going to so go on the website that Emma and team have done an amazing job putting together. So I'm very, very grateful. And we'll keep you posted on what you can do. But one of the things that we're going to do is have a book club. We're going to have 3 meetings. And the first one will be for the first part of the book, the problem. The second one will be the pivot. And the third one will be the promise. So that's like a public event for anyone who's connected to the website. And we'll talk about the chapters of the book that way. And we're going to create a hub so that people can talk to one another. And then we're going to incorporate our lessons from Omkari about community building and reflect those. And we'll have a space also for stories, because stories give you a way to visualize how you can create a bonobo sisterhood in your own life. And I want to say that, bonobo sisterhood it's a frame, it's an idea, but women have been supporting other women and protecting other women for years and years and years. And this is just a different way of framing that's very, very hopeful, because bonobos have eliminated male sexual coercion. And it's worth saying again that because of that, they enjoy reproductive autonomy. And here, in case Carrie Baker is in the audience, which I think she might be, she has a very recently published, it's not even dry yet, I don't think, book on the abortion pill. So I would highly commend that to anybody about reproductive autonomy and freedom. Okay, other questions? Oh, come on. Everyone's so quiet.
Sure, I have one for Renee and Shay, or anybody can answer,
Great.
but Renee and Shay, you mentioned that sometimes, or maybe even oftentimes, it's actually somebody familiar to you or somebody that you know. So any advice for situations where like maybe you're okay, having a bit of a conversation, or you know them, but then it gets into another lane or section, and you want to pull back then. So it's a little bit different of like, okay, I was okay with talking to you for a second, but now I want to be done. Like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, we always talk about how you can set boundaries anytime. And that's true in that stranger conversation as well, because we have students come up sometimes and they're like, but I am chatty. And that person wasn't making me feel uncomfortable. And like, yeah, then cool. You can totally talk to them. Don't feel like you have to continue a conversation indefinitely until the other person wants to be done. Like you're always allowed to say, hey, I don't actually feel like talking anymore, right? And with a familiar person, I would also just point out that like you get to choose when you set explicit boundaries and when you just like sort of protect yourself in ways that are like, and I'm using protect sort of widely here, right? Like maybe I'm just protecting myself from like having more uncomfortable interactions with this person because I just kind of because I don't want to be in them, right? And maybe the way I do that is I sort of just walk away or find somebody else to talk to or make an excuse like I'm going to go to the bathroom or whatever, right? Um, and there are reasons why we might choose that in moments and in certain relationships. But it's also helpful to recognize that if we choose to set the boundary instead and be more explicit about why we're ending a conversation, like, hey, I'm happy to talk to you about this, but like, now you're asking me too many personal questions, or
Mm-hmm.
hey, actually what you're doing right now is starting to make me feel uncomfortable. Then we get a more clear understanding of how safe that person is, right? So if we want to get more information about that familiar person in our life, or if we want to sort of send a message to that familiar person in our life that they're not going to be somebody that can like continue to push and push and push until we are in a space with them that we don't want to be, then we might want to consider actually being more explicit, and just naming whatever the behavior is that we don't like. And that doesn't necessarily need to like mean that they're doing anything wrong. Sometimes people aren't aware that they're making us uncomfortable, and then we're actually inviting them to show us that they're safe, right? And to like to be in relationship with us in a healthy way, because now you know that I will tell you when I don't like what's happening, and you will have the opportunity to stop making me feel that way, right?
Thank you.
Good question. So Emma, could you go back to the slide for a moment of the 3 things that we're featuring on the website right now? That one. So I'm really happy and grateful that that Ellen Grossman has entered the fray from the Empowerment Self-Defense Global Movement. And what we're trying to do is create self-worth defending classes. So it's different from the usual self-defense class in that we focus on self-worth in an intentional way to disable the patriarchal messages that we get living in a patriarchy as a non-white male, or even as a white male, just disregarding patriarchal learning and messages that we get about our own self-worth. And then we embed that message in an empowerment self-defense class. And what we're trying to do is help people create these partnerships locally, but also we will develop some online content so that they can create their own self-defense classes in their own geographic area. And that's a really, really exciting thing. building your sisterhood is going to be like the big umbrella of, we want to hear stories about how you're building a sisterhood. And then the book club is, I've been talking to different book clubs. I've posted on the site a guide to the book with questions, and I'm happy to come to your book group, but I can't go to everybody's book group. But if you want to make book groups and invite me or whatever, or other of the Bonobo sisters who are in a leadership position in the organization, we're happy to help facilitate. And I think that's about it. We're at 5:58. I want to say, everyone, take exceptionally good care of yourselves and one another, like the bonobos do. Come to one another's aid, and just assume that everybody needs you, because this is a time when we need all hands on deck, and we need to know that we have our posse around us. So whether they're geographically around you, or, in London or in different parts of the world, we're here for each other. And I'm really thrilled that you all chose to come tonight. Spread the word. We'll have more webinars, and sending messages of hope and peace to all of